Okay, then I'm predicting the Las Vegas Raiders record prediction. So if you watch previous videos, you know I'm pretty high on the Raiders. I think the Raiders have a great defense. I think that potential be like a top five, top three defense, like they were late last season. I am still worried about their offense, though they really don't have that many skill position players that are that good. Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers, I think, make a great duo. Zamir White, I have hoped that he was gonna be at least like above average of a back, but I don't like Aiden O'Connell. But I do think if they start Gardner Minshew, they will have a better chance. Offensive line to me is solid, but it's really their defense. Their defensive line and their linebackers are really strong with guys like Crosby, Wilkins, Spillane. I am slightly worried about their cornerbacks, like who's gonna win that right cornerback or slot cornerback, but I I think Antonio Pierce will do a good job of that defense. But you have your first game versus the Chargers. Both these teams have new head coaches. Jim Harbaugh, I'm not sure how well he's going to implement that offense in the first week, especially playing a good defense. Um, and I don't trust that Chargers defense at all. Like I said multiple times, regardless of who starts, I think they'll have a decent game versus that Chargers defense. So I'm taking the Raiders winning. Then you have week two versus the Ravens. Raiders can definitely upset the Ravens. I could see it. I could see that Raiders defense stopping the Lamar, but Ravens, their team is just way too talented. Their defense is gonna shut down Aiden O'Connell and pretty much that whole Raiders offense. And I gotta take the Ravens here. They're just way more balanced. Then you have them versus the Panthers. Panthers are still a rebuilding team. Their offense, even though they improved from last year, are still not good. The Raiders defense, I think, is better and can slow down that Panthers offense. And that Panthers defense really isn't anything special. I'm going to take the Raiders here, especially with home field advantage. Then week four versus the Browns. Um, both these teams have very good defenses, and both of them have question marks on offense. While I do think the Browns have a better offense with Jerome Ford and Chubb and their wide receivers. Their defense does not travel well, and the Raiders have home field advantage. I think their defense can match up well versus that Browns run game and their offense in general. So I'm going to take the Raiders here. Then you have them versus the Broncos. Broncos, they're rebuilding, and for some reason the Raiders always sweep the Broncos, and I don't see that changing. Sean Payton is an offensive mastermind, so I could see a split, but I think the Raiders, like last year, are going to sweep the Broncos. You have them versus the Steelers. This one, I think, is going to be a very defensive match. Both defensive-minded head coach, both have great defenses, both have question marks at quarterback. Um, I don't like Russell Wilson or Justin Fields versus Crosby and Wilkins. I think they're going to get the sack. Um, Wilson and Fields, whoever starts, will get like sacked a lot by that Raiders defensive line, and I think Aiden O'Connell will be a game manager, and that will be enough to win this game. So I'm taking the Raiders here, especially with home field advantage. And then you have Denver versus Week 7 versus the Rams. Like on my previous video, the Rams have very talented offense. I think can challenge that Raiders defense. I'm not sure if any of the cornerbacks in the Raiders are good enough to stop Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, and that Rams defense isn't bad. Um, Good enough to stop that Raiders offense. I'm taking the Rams here. Then you have Week 8 versus the Chiefs. Chiefs, their offense isn't bad, but I feel like the Chiefs now game have adapted and now are more of a defensive team, and that is not good for the Raiders. Raiders offense, I don't think will play well versus the Chiefs. I think that Chiefs will adapt, will change, and will be able to solve that Raiders offense. I'm taking the Chiefs here. And you have Denver versus the Bengals. Similarly, Bengals, very talented team. Um, I really just don't see that Raiders offense getting the job done. I think that Raiders defense will slow down but not stop that Bengals offense, which is very talented. But that Bengals defense, which wasn't the greatest last year, but should be a solid defense, will stop whoever the Raiders offense. I just don't see the Ravens offense carrying them for any game. And then you have Week 11 versus the Dolphins. Raiders are coming off a bye, but Dolphins a big home field advantage. Um, on Dolphins, their weapons I think will be a problem for the Raiders defense. Like I said, I'm slightly worried about those Raiders cornerbacks and one of their safeties. I think Waddle and Tyreek will be too much for them, and that Dolphins defense, I think will be solid. And Tua usually gets the ball out quickly, so I see him negating that Raiders pass rush. So I'm taking the Dolphins here. Yeah, Week 12 versus the Broncos. Like I said earlier, I think the Raiders are going to sweep the Broncos again. I'm going to take the Raiders here. Then it's a Friday night game against the Chiefs against the Chiefs again. I I could see the Raiders splitting with the Chiefs, but like I said earlier, I think the Chiefs have adapted. They're more of a defensive team now, especially with the short week. I gotta take the Chiefs here with home field advantage. It's gonna be cold or dry in Kansas City at that point, so I'm taking the Chiefs. Then you have Week 14 versus the Buccaneers. Buccaneers are another team that I like a lot. I liked a lot last year. I think their offense can challenge that Raiders defense, especially with Mike Evans. And that Bucks defense, even though it's not going to be great, I think they'll do just enough. I'm going to take the Bucks here. Then you have them versus the Falcons. This one I think could be a sneaky good game, depending on who's starting. If it's Kirk Cousins, I can see this being a 50-50 game, but if it's Michael Penix, I gotta take the Raiders. But assuming it's Kirk Cousins, he's a veteran quarterback. I could see him unlocking that Raiders defense a little bit, but Falcons defense isn't exactly spectacular. It's hard to tell at this point. It's so late in the season. I'm gonna take the Raiders here because of their home field advantage. Then week 16 versus the Jaguars, another team where the Raiders will have a huge home field advantage just because of the location. Jaguars, they're not the most talented team. I just don't see the Jaguars having enough skill position players to like take advantage to like beat that Raiders defense. I'm taking the Raiders here. And you have them versus the Saints. Saints, good defensive team. This is going to be a very close game. Both defensive teams. I think I'm um, just gonna take the Saints here because they have big home field advantage and they're slightly more talented with more veteran experience than Week 18 versus the Chargers. I do think that the Raiders will sweep the Chargers. I'm not a huge fan of Jim Harbaugh. I just don't trust the Chargers at all this season, so I'm taking the Raiders here. So in the end, the Raiders going 9-8, 4-2 in the division, 7-1 at home, and 2-7 away.